Hi everyone, and welcome to this webinar. I'll just do a quick sound check and a couple of household things. If you can hear me, everything is okay. Can you please send a yes into the chat? Yes, good, great, lovely. So, while we're waiting for more people to join, just a couple more minutes. Thanks very much for joining me in this webinar today. As always, nice to see familiar faces and people who I taught or was in communication with, or hopefully will teach at some point in the future. So I can see that we have people joining from quite a lot of different places and even a couple of people from the other countries. So it's great to see that you're still not tired of webinars, still not very tired of Zoom, and willing to participate and to work. Okay, so a couple of household things. This webinar is being recorded, so if at some point you lose the connection or if you need to watch the webinar again later, you will receive an email with a link to this recording. You will also receive a certificate. It will arrive in the same email, but not today. As well as that, you will receive my slides, so you will have access to all the information I will be giving you today. Okay, so I'm just checking how many people we have and whether we need to wait. No, okay. Okay, so if you read the blurb for this webinar, if you read the abstract, you know that today we're going to be talking about communication, and we're going to be mentioning things which are more than just a language, more than grammar, speaking, writing, because writing is also a way of communicating. And hopefully we will discover a couple new things. Mostly the things I am talking about today come from linguistics, sociolinguistics, and also human psychology. They go a little bit beyond standard teaching, but they are the things we refer to on our Delta courses. So if you are preparing to apply, preparing to take Delta Module 1, Module 2, Module 3, or if you're just curious and want to know something more than just how to teach speaking, so hopefully you're in the right place. I think I'm ready to share my screen and start working. So I just need... Okay. So before we continue, if you want to say something, you know that you're muted. You can send your question into the chat. We have a moderator here with us today. So if I miss your question, because I won't always be looking into the chat, I will be given that question later, or I will try and monitor the chats as well. I can see that some of you are already raising hands. Can you send your question into the chat, please? So that I can see it and answer it later. Okay. So here we are. it's more than just about the language. And we know that communication happens on a lot of levels. And we all want to make sure that when we are communicating, we are being understood correctly. And we also understand our interlocutor correctly. I am just opening my drive on my phone so that I can see my notes. And in a second, I will move on to my first slide. Okay, here we are. So, communication. When we talk about communication, there are a lot of different approaches and views of the concept. And the key things, the important things we need to mention are utterances which we produce and the literal sense of what we are saying. Because utterance is whatever shape the message takes, and the message itself is what we want to call the literal sense. And in a lot of cases, the message itself and how we shape it, they are the same. But there are so many cases when they differ. And it's very important to keep this in mind so that there is no breakdown in communication. So let's see what I mean. When we read books in linguistics, we can often find the word ostensive, and which I wanted to look for in different sources. And the definition I liked for this concept is that verbal communication has the aim to draw the addressee's attention to the fact that the communicator intends to give some information in some form, and also to give some additional information which is not the literal sense. And that's where the concept of the utterance comes from. And when I do this webinar, when I started this webinar, I had, too early. I had two intentions in my head. The first intention is like the basic level of my intention is informative. That is to say, I did some research, I collected the information, and I wanted to give the information to you. However, there are other communicative intentions. For example, to encourage you to think about or rethink your speaking lessons and what else you can add there. My other intention might be to encourage you to start thinking about delta, because what we're talking about here today is, again, a little bit beyond the standard delta level. And so when those two meet, they can either work together well or not. And there's one very interesting man who did quite a lot of research on that, and also was criticized quite a lot. Does anybody know the face? If yes, can you please send the name into the chat? I'll just wait for a minute. Okay, no answers in the chat. So the man I'm talking about here is Paul Grice, who did a lot of research on communication, and he actually developed the concept of the communicative principle. And we're going to have a look in more detail later, but first, an example. Imagine a couple, let's say Liz and Andrew, a married couple living happily, planning their upcoming weekend. And so Liz is speaking to Andrew, and she says one of the four utterances, which you can see on the screen. So if you think about it, yeah, if this couple is talking about the weekend and she says, oh, the weather was really awful on the 19th of October, 1974. Okay, that's a fact. But how relevant is it to the conversation they are having at the moment? How about number 3? When she says the weather is really awful right now, does it have any relevance to the upcoming weekend? Maybe not. Does it have any relevance to the general information which Andrew needs? Maybe not, because again, that's a fact, and he can simply look out of the window and see the weather. Number 4 is informative, if you like, because it talks about the upcoming weekend. However, there is so much information there that Liz simply doesn't need to say it all to Andrew, because it's too difficult and time-consuming to decipher and use it for planning. So we're left with the first one, and we're going to try and understand why the first one is relevant, or what we want to use, and also learn how to do that in our speaking. So back to Mr. Grice, and here is the key statement in the theory I'm talking about today. So make your contribution such as is required at the stage at which it occurs by the accepted purpose or direction of the talk exchange in which you are engaged. And that's the requirement to the speaker, which would help the speaker be understood. What does that mean? So he broke down his idea, his theory, into 4 maxims. They are the maxim of quantity, quality, relation, and manner. And so when we think about that, the maxim of quantity goes, make your contribution just about as informative as it is needed. If you remember, we had this third sentence where the weather will be awful 2,000 days after some date. That's too much information, so not needed. The maxim of quality says that when making a contribution, we need to make sure that what we are saying is truthful or can be supported by evidence. So if what we say is not something we believe in, that's not what we should be saying. The fourth one, the maxim of the third one, the maxim of relation, says that the message we are trying to convey should be relevant to the current topic and to the speaker. So the speaker has to be able to understand what we're saying. And finally, the maxim of manner says that the message should be clear, brief, and orderly or like well ordered. That means, you know, at least follow the standard sentence patterns, text patterns, message patterns, and so on. And so those are the 4 rules which make our communication successful. However, quite a lot of researchers later said that if it was all like this, we would not have a lot of lovely, beautiful figures of speech, which we have and which occur quite a lot. So if you think about this exchange, there is an A who's just there in the street, and there is a B who's just a, you know, passerby. So if A suddenly turns to B and says, "I'm out of gas," and the answer is there is a gas station around the corner, here we are violating quite a few maxims if we're not fully sure. So for instance, the fact that there is a gas station around the corner doesn't mean that A, it will be open, B, they will have the gas A needs. So it's there, okay. We could also violate the maxim of manner if, say, this is just A thinking to him or herself, and then B suddenly intrudes into this train of thought. This also gives us an opportunity for a lot of different plays, if you like, and making our speech more interesting. So when we think about communication and when we think about those rules, we want to keep in mind that there are 3 components to communication. That's a verbal component. Clearly, that's the language we are using. That's a paraverbal component, and that's things related to the language, but not fully independently being language. That is to say, for example, the intonation, the stress, the pauses a speaker is making. And finally, nonverbal, and that includes smiling, eye contact, gestures. That includes the posture, how close we are to our interlocutor, and in a few minutes you will find out why this is important. So again, when we think about our speaking lessons, it's clear that we focus on the verbal components, and of course paraverbal as well, because we do teach stress, intonation, and other features of phonology. But nonverbal, do we focus on that as much, and do we have to? So probably about a year ago, I was working on a CELTA course, and when we were finishing the course, my lovely trainees gave me a book as a present. And the book was called Surrounded by Idiots. So I was, a bit surprised. That's not something you would normally get as present, especially from your students. But then I put it on my desk and thought I will read it at some point. And it stayed there for a long time. But then I took the book and read it probably in 2 days, because this is a fascinating theory about how there are different types of people and how they show themselves and how we should approach them and how we should communicate with them so that our communication is effective. So the theory goes, there are 4 different colors of people. And as I'm talking about this, I'm sure you'll be able to identify, this is normally not a pure type. Normally it's a mixture, but I'm sure you'll be able to identify your types. So red, yellow, green, and blue, different types of people with different priorities in mind, and the different things they pay attention to. So, reds. Think about it. Is it you? Or is it somebody you know? If yes, send a message into the chat. So this is a very, very much condensed piece of information, but the book is absolutely fascinating. So if you want to read it, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. So reds. Reds are normally the people who we call dominant leaders. So they look powerful, they have powerful handshakes, stay at a distance, but if they lean forward or approach, that's normally a more aggressive way. They are not afraid to establish and keep the eye contact and have very controlling gestures and sometimes, even the posture of a boss. I'm sure we've all seen that. How to talk to those people? The key thing is to be sincere, direct, and have arguments. Because if during communication, those people start feeling that, we're beating about the bush, not being sincere, trying to choose the right words, they will spot weaknesses and they will use those weaknesses against us. That's not good or bad. That's a type of personality. And the research done by Thomas Erickson says that it comes from some of our biological features as well. So that all goes down to the level of different hormones we have. So when talking to reds, if we are sincere, open, direct, the communication goes fine. However, there is one thing which can annoy them, and make the communication break down, and that's blunt negative feedback. If we approach or attack those people with blunt, straightforward comments, they won't want to listen to us any further. That includes things like, you shouldn't have done that, or why did you do that, or that was wrong. So that kind of stuff doesn't work with reds. So what should we do? If we know the type of personality we are working with, ideally what we do is reformulate the feedback we are giving. So instead of, you shouldn't have done that, we can say, so what are the other ways to approach this? Or that's wrong. Are there any other options or possibilities? Okay, so that's reds. Thinking about yellows, they're, that life and soul of the party. Very relaxed, make jokes, friendly, expressive gestures, and they often are there, so they come close, approach the people. Yellows normally respond well to surprise, surprise, the same kind of people. So, if we respond to their jokes and make jokes as well, the atmosphere will be friendly, and yellows will feel comfortable. They are terribly disorganized, though, and they need a clear list of what they need to do. One thing that annoys yellows is because they are the life and soul of the party, they hate it when the people aren't listening to them and aren't following. So that's a total no-no. Ooh. Something happened, sorry. Okay, I can see some comments in the chat, very nice. So let me just continue. So yes, with yellows, it's very important to be there with them and to listen. And in the next section, I am going to show you how to do that, and we're going to try out an activity for that. So the greens, they are nice and friendly, but not the life and soul of the party. They're just, kind. They use a lot of eye contact. Their gestures aren't yellow. And they often don't come very close and, intrude into the personal space. So greens are kind of the opposite to yellows. They don't like to be in the spotlight. They enjoy private companies. So one-to-one meetings are much better for them. They are quite fragile. So when they receive feedback, it's very important to convey the message that it's nothing personal, it's only because there are other ways of doing things. Greens like to have everything in order and to plan things. So if you suddenly say, here's a change of plan, they won't feel very comfortable. And if if you think about, for example, the UK English, one very common thing they do is before they start a conversation and give a message, they introduce the topic. So, for example, I was once traveling in the UK and a friend of mine told me he had just come back from Ukraine. He was doing training there. And I was like, oh, what were you doing in Kiev? To which he told me what he was doing there, but then later said that it's more common in their culture to give an introductory phrase, something like, oh, Kiev, was it your first time? Did you like it? And then ask the direct, what were you doing there? Okay. And finally, the blues. The blues prefer to be quiet and calm and rather reserved. So very much closed body language, staying at a distance. That doesn't mean they are unfriendly, it just means that they're more comfortable being there a little bit further. So when we talk to blues, it's very important to plan what we are going to say, because they like to have everything in order. They like to know that what you're saying is serious. So if we approach a blue without arguments, things might fail. Blues also do not like direct critics, but they do not like direct critics unsupported by evidence or arguments. I'm going to add this phrase to the slide later. So whatever we say has to be proved by something. And so why is this important? I'm just going to give you a situation here. I'd like you to read through And 2 questions. 1, red, green, yellow, or blue. 2, how do you need to approach this situation? So a couple of minutes, and I'll be waiting in the chat. I like the comments. A good question in the chat. So are the British Greens? Well, there is no sharp, yes, they are Greens. It's just that this is a cultural component which comes from human psychology and how our brain works. But because it was more commonly spread in the UK, it's now not just part of the personality type, it's part of most of their personalities. Okay, so this is yellow. Fully agree, yes. The life and soul of the party, speaking there, and then, you know, when the colleague finds out that everybody is upset, she's like, oh, but I was trying to entertain you. And you need to explain what happened. Can you choose the right words? Let's try. I'll just wait a couple minutes. Okay. Interesting. Okay, Elisabetta. So just tell her straight away you might want to let others butt in a word. Okay, more ideas? Yellow, yellow, yellow. That's a yellow person. And remember we said what annoys the people is when we are not following them, so when we're not there. And have a look here, yeah? So yellows are most receptive when you are open and friendly. So if we can find the right words, and I'm sure you're familiar with sandwich feedback, for example, say, so here's how you could build the conversation, keeping in mind that they want to be followed and they want the people to listen to them. We could start from questions. Things like, so what did you enjoy about last evening? And what do you think the other people enjoyed about last evening? What else would you want to have done last evening? Yeah? What other things would you enjoy? So focusing on you, keeping in mind they want to be listened to, but being gentle and not saying this was wrong, but again, asking for alternatives. So again, this theory is very, very much comprehensive. And trust me, it's a full book in which the author talks about different situations and how we can approach the people in those situations. So here I've just given you a condensed summary of that. But how do we use that? Why is that important? And how can we use that in our lessons? That's a real question. So I'll wait just another minute for you to share your ideas. Correcting mistakes, yes. Absolutely, absolutely. So depending on who we are correcting, we need to choose the right words. Giving feedback, very good. While explaining the material, interesting. How? Remember we said greens don't like it when it's personal. Blues want everything to be structured and organized. So those ideas. However, the author, Thomas, links this theory to one strategy, which is still, I think, very much underestimated. And the strategy is active listening. I'm sure you've heard of the concept and seen it and a lot of things, but I'd just like to share a couple of practical things. So have a look at this conversation. What went wrong? Yay, exactly. So remember we said we had the principles, Grice's principles, about what kind of information we should include in our message. And what happened here is the fact that 3 phrases, not feeling very well, ill, and have a temperature, all come from one and the same scope. However, they don't mean the same. I'm not feeling very well. In this case, might simply mean, Mom, listen, I want to sleep a couple more hours. I have nothing important today. And Mom hears the phrase and immediately makes a conclusion that the son is ill. And then it goes even further with Dad, who makes another assumption. And it all happens because people don't listen to each other. So in this situation, active listening steps in, and active listening is one of the things which we implement quite a lot on CELTA, and one of the things which I think we need to teach everyone. So basically, what can happen here is, remember this game from our childhood when one person says something and then it's the next person and the next person, and funny weird things arrive to the final person, and it's never what, or almost never what we intended. You can test this, and I did actually. So take like 2-3 sentences, standard sentences like, oh, last night I cooked something, something. Say this sentence to 4 different people and then ask them to say the sentence back to you, say in 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, not like immediately. And you will see how different people interpret different messages. And this happens exactly because we are red, green, blue, and yellow, and we focus on the different things. So a combination of knowing who you're speaking to and being able to do active listening helps avoid this kind of misunderstanding. I often make jokes on the CELTA courses. I say, like, halfway through the course, I ask my trainees, so are you already asking instruction checking questions to your friends? And they look at me in a puzzled way and say, yes, how do you know? And that's the funny thing, because I developed this habit on my own CELTA course as well. We get so much used to asking ICQs, and they become so convenient that when you're arranging a meeting with a friend, then at the end of the conversation, you say, so meeting at 5, inside or outside the train station? And, on the left or on the right? Just to make sure we know what's happening. And this can be done in several ways. So active listening consists of, or can be done with the help of 3 strategies. The first one is paraphrasing what the person just said. So something like, if I understand correctly, and then you reiterate what you just heard. Interpreting, if you notice the difference between paraphrasing and interpreting, when we paraphrase, we work from I. If I understand. In other words, this is what I heard. When we, that's paraphrasing. When we interpret, we check if this is what the person feels or thinks. With the help of, oh, so you want to go to the cinema tonight? Or, so you think this is blah, 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 blah. Or we can check how the people felt. And then the third strategy, if you like, is emotional responses, or reiterating basically what the person just said. Things like, oh, that's interesting. Oh no, you said that, blah, blah. Shows that you are still there and encourages the other person to give you more information. Again, I read quite a lot of research about the British culture here, and they have one little funny tendency. In an active conversation, speaker A says something, speaker B, before saying something new, normally repeats the last 2 or 3 words, or like the last chunk from A's conversation, from A's utterance. And that's exactly the emotional response, which shows active listening. And then if we use this, a combination of responses plus, say, paraphrasing, that works even better. And if we keep in mind whether we are blue, red, green, or yellow, and whether we should stand back or lean forward, and how we participate, that can create an even better impression and communication style. So let's do it. Let's practice a little bit. I'd like you to send a message into the chat, and I'll try and show you how this works. And then we'll do it the other way around. And that's like a mini drill, which works very nicely at the beginning of the lesson or at the end of the lesson, when you want to help the students warm up. So think about your plans for the upcoming weekend and send me a message about your plans. For example, I have nothing interesting. Well, nothing interesting. I have my usual working Saturday and working Sunday, where I have CELTA course going on and also some exams on Sunday. What about you? Oh, Elizaveta, most likely to be cleaning up the whole weekend. So, in other words, you're going to be busy with household chores. Ksenia, you're going to cook an apple pie. Interesting. So is that something you normally do at the weekend? Diana needs to find the proper chair, computer chair. Oh, Diana, I feel your pain. So if you find the proper computer chair, send me a message. I'll happily join you. Oksana. Oh, Oksana, I like your option. Planning to stay at home and order a big pizza. Yeah. So what's your favorite pizza? Okay, I'm not going to go through all of the phrases, but you notice the pattern. So I reiterate and sometimes react to what you just said, and then I ask an additional question. So let's try it the other way around. Okay. Let's try with some things we already have in the chat. Svetlana, the last message in the chat, Svetlana is saying, I'm going to relax. So can you now react to what Svetlana said, please? Remember, active listening, so use the strategies. Good. Don't forget, when you send an emotional reaction, don't forget to follow it up with something else. Because like if it's a simple it may look like we are not listening. So this is particularly important in online communication because I mentioned this in a couple of webinars. With Zoom, people have started, and online in general, have started feeling a bit more miserable because when I say something, it takes the online half a second or something, depends, to transmit it to where you are. So you hear it like after a second. And then you react to it, and it takes another second for me to hear it. So what I feel is, okay, there is a 2-second delay. Maybe you're not listening. So you see, it's important to, make sure that we anchor this information. The other thing is, so at the moment, I'm kind of like speaking to the computer. So I look in different places because I don't see anyone's face. But in online communication, it's also keeping in mind, yes, the types of personalities. It's also important to have some eye contact regularly. The point I'm making here is we all know very well how to teach grammar, vocabulary, phonology, speaking, and so on. But there are those little cultural things and psychological things which also contribute to how communication develops. And I feel that, in the modern century already, with so much technology and so much information available, it's our job to raise our students' awareness of those little things from the other areas of life which contribute to communication, because language is for communication. A very important thing which I will share. I'll actually share a secret with you now. So when we prepare our students for exams, and especially when I have to work as an examiner, and you know that we are the biggest exam center in Ukraine, so that happens a lot. We have a lot of criteria to look for, but there is this criterion called interactive communication. Yes, Andrew, it does have a lot in common with cognitive psychology. So we have this criterion, interactive communication, which says the students are able to initiate, respond, link the contributions, and develop the interaction towards an outcome. And the biggest problem we always see is that, students have to talk about, agree on something, agree on what to give as a present to a girl. And they look at the picture and say, oh, I think that skateboard would be nice. And the second person says, yeah, skateboard might be nice, but how about a book? But then there is so much you can say about a skateboard. Like, oh, maybe she's like a tiny girl and it's too much for her. Or maybe, yes, I know she likes sport or something like that. So the thing I would like to practice more in myself, and I think it would be great if we could all try it, is before responding, before saying something, considering asking a question which could give us more information. And that's a real treasure. So yes, let's keep that in mind, especially when preparing students for exams. And if you are not our partner for exams, hurry up to join, because, well, the spring is coming and I really don't know how our exam center manages to do all the exams. They are amazing. So don't worry, we will have places for you, but do join us. We give a lot of support to all our partners. And you have the links in the chat, and you will receive the links as part of the email. So we have designed and developed a partnership program in which we provide support for those who want to work with us. And this includes, telling you basic information about exams, giving you the official materials, helping you promote exams among your parents, students, and everyone. And also, a lot of support with registration and administration. Teacher training, don't forget about that, please. You know that we are also the biggest for CELTA, Delta, CELT-P, and CELT-S. We were the first to start doing online CELTA, and we have successfully run more than 5, 6 online courses already. So being very active, actually having candidates from all around the world, and that has become really interesting. We have a lot of webinars, and our next webinar on the 25th of February next week with Grice on teaching higher levels. And we also have, ta-da, 3 programs endorsed by the Ministry of Education. That's CELT-P, CELT-S, and our Great Teacher Program, preparation for TKT. If you're working for a state school and you need to do professional development every 5 years, the 150 hours, you can get our certificate and it will be accepted as that professional development. So more information, use the website, which you can see in the chat or on the screen. But those courses are really lovely, and because they follow the Cambridge standards, they are reliable. Time for questions, I guess. Any questions, please send them into the chat. If you don't have any questions, I'll leave my contact details here, so you can write to us or call us. And before I get your questions, I want to thank you for being with me today, this 1 hour. Thank you for being curious and continuing to develop professionally. So thanks for your time. And I'm waiting for questions. Diana, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your comments. Thanks. I'll just stay another probably 3 minutes to see if I have any questions. Remember, you will get the slides. So you will see the books, all the information, the links, everything. Okay, I can see people started leaving. If you don't have CELTA, can you take the Delta course? Yes, all depends on your preparation and practice. If you have been working with the communicative methodology, you know the principles of CELTA, that's fine. We discussed this during the interview, so if you send us an email or apply, we'll talk about it on a one-to-one basis individually. How to become part of our team as an ESL teacher? I think we have a section with vacancies on our website, but also just send an email to either my KP at grade.ua or CELTA at grade.ua, and I will put you in touch with whoever is responsible for that. Thank you. Thank you for the comments. You will receive the links in your emails, absolutely. Is there anything a teacher should read before taking CELTA and Delta? Oh, yes, absolutely. Before you take CELTA, you do a special pre-course task. And before you do Delta, you read a lot, absolutely. But we give you all the lists and information you need to read. Thank you. Thank you. Lovely to see familiar names. Thank you. Okay, I'll be finishing the webinar there. I will stop sharing my screen and we'll close everything. If I haven't answered your question, please send me an email and enjoy your evening.